everyone, and welcome to another edition of A Lot of Help. Yes, that is A Lot of Help. I am your host, James Lott Jr., and I'm so glad you guys can join us today, or whenever you're listening to this. We're recording this on a Thursday. It's a June gloom Thursday here in Los Angeles, and I'm not happy. Not about that at all. But it's how we get every year. And so I'm glad you could join me. Of course, you can follow us on Facebook on our Lot of Help page. Go ahead and go there and like it and tell me what you think. And these shows, of course, are on iTunes and Spreaker.com. Type in A Lot of Help. Or go to JLJ Media, which is who produces this, my company. And you can find all the episodes there, including this one we're doing today. Plus, my 15-part podcast series, 15 Tips to Self-Care. Series 1 is on there also. I always like to bring you guys people who are doing amazing work and trying to help affect change in the world, and that's also in the arts. And I'm bringing you somebody. I posted the video on our page yesterday. I've gotten some feedback, some positive feedback, and it's kind of for some adult language. And make sure I put a little explicit thing on there just in case because it's a serious subject. And I'm gonna have my guests explain exactly what the short film was about. I've watched it several times. It affected me, and I actually interviewed one of its stars, creators, writers, producers, on my show for a spotlight on AfterBuzz TV. So you go to AfterBuzzTV.com, and you can find that interview there. And the other person I'll be talking to, we'll be setting up an interview with him on that said show in July when I get back to LA. But my two guests, the movie's called Pretext, and it deals with a very interesting subject that I didn't really know much about. And it's very powerful. And they both created it and starred in it, and they wrote it just all together. Christina Elizabeth Smith and Jeremy Radin. Hi, you guys.
Hi.
How's that for you? Nice little intro.
Amazing.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Okay, so I mean, seriously, and Christina and I said we've already sat down and talked about her career, and this is one of the things she does. And Jeremy, of course, you teach. You're a poet. My first book of poetry just came out. I'm getting rave reviews for it. And it's kind of interesting. I never thought I'd release a book of poetry.
Get out of here! I didn't know that.
Yes, it's on Amazon, and people are seriously. I'm getting reviewed on Amazon. And people are writing to me saying how it affects them, and it's my first attempt. I decided to document my year last year through poetry, and it was a very up and down year. I lost a brother, I lost a business, gained a business, got popularity, lost some. I mean, a lot of stuff happened, and I wrote about it. And I put out this 23-page booklet. Someone said, James, you should publish it. So I did, and I'm getting more attention than I thought I was going to get. And you're a poet yourself.
Congratulations. Yeah. What's your book called?
Here's what it's called. James Lott Jr.'s Untitled Book of Poetry.
Yes.
Yeah.
Everybody likes that title. So I just thought it was something ironic, I guess. And it's on Amazon. It's really inexpensive, like $3.99. It's really inexpensive. You can get it on Kindle, you can get it on paperback, but people are really relating to it and enjoying it. I'm loving this process of being vulnerable in that way and sharing it. Because, Christina and I talk about being vulnerable as an actress, things like that, and writer. Now I'm experiencing that myself. Because I'm a host. I mean, I don't have to be vulnerable. I don't have to be super vulnerable. I can just be the interviewer, and I can share stuff. But now I'm showing somebody, here's like my personal life, kind of. Here you go.
Yeah.
Take it and please be kind. No,
Yeah.
you guys know how that is. I mean, when you guys birth something of your own, I mean, does it feel like you're giving birth and like say, here's my baby, what's gonna happen?
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, the feeling of like sending a thing like that out into the world kind of is, it's like sending a kid off to college, and you're like, I don't know what the world's gonna do to it, but I just gotta trust that it's gonna be able to handle it. It's a weird feeling.
It must be. It must be just. I mean, I'm seeing that now. It's like, okay, because I'm used to putting out other works and stuff. Like this was like, okay, this is not nonfiction. I mean, this is me. This isn't fiction. This is me. This is James Lott Jr. Putting out something that's his, and I'm very. It's been very nice.
Yeah.
And
it's so brave though, because people need that. They needed that to feel less alone, and I think that's our job as artists. So it's so brave.
Yeah.
Thank you. And that's what I'm finding. People are saying, and I'm telling you, people who are like 80-year-old grandmothers are like, oh my God, I felt the same way about that poem you wrote about loss. And you lost your brother. I felt the same way when I lost my husband. Like, there are actually people of different ages and races and genders, and they're completely relating to it. I'm like, wow, I didn't expect that part. I just thought, oh, okay, I'll put it out and see what happens. And
and that's kind of the amazing thing about I mean, all art, but there's something specific to poetry that's like you put out something that is so intensely personal, filled with like the specific details of your life, and somehow all of these people who have had a completely different life are able to relate to it in such an incredible way and say like, oh, this is my life too. Maybe the details are swapped out, but the general feeling underneath it is like, I've been there, I know what that is. And it's kind of a magic of, feels like with the very specific magic of poetry is that.
Well, it's funny you both touched on two things I agree with. The feeling of not feeling alone, because you feel like, you know how you feel, and when it happens to you, it's only happening to me, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you know how that is. And so now you actually say, oh no, this, I mean, I think deep down we all know this only doesn't happen to us, but it feels that way when you see something on the screen, or when I've watched your film, or you feel like, okay, I'm not alone. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, ooh, okay, I can be alone. But Jeremy, I want to ask you just briefly, when it comes to, how long have you been doing poetry?
I've been writing so I'm 33. I've been writing poetry since I was 15.
Okay.
But I've only been, I've been taking it seriously, like really, trying to get into the craft of it since I was probably for about 7 years.
Okay.
Before I would just write, like, sit in my room and, like, write poems alone while listening to, like, Counting Crows or whatever.
Yes.
Like very dramatic teenager poetry.
Yeah.
I wrote dramatic teenager poetry up into my early 20s. But then I think at a certain point I, like, wanted to start really taking it seriously, and that was probably, 7-8 years ago.
It's funny you say that, because I used to write, I kept journals through my teenage years. I don't know if you've heard of Mortified.
Oh, yeah.
I love that. I've been to, and they're my, because I'm 48. They're my age group. A lot of them are my age group, and they're expanding. And I've gone to go perform, like, oh my gosh, so I went back to my journals. I was sitting writing my journals to the Smiths. Totally want to kill yourself. To the Smiths and to, like, Sisters of Mercy, and just like, I would like, oh my god, bleed my arm, and I'd read this stuff and I go, oh my god, I was so angsty. Like, it was so, everything was so dramatic.
At least you had good. I mean, like, the Smiths are, like, cool though. That's like good. I mean, I used to listen to, like, the Goo Goo Dolls.
Okay, disclaimer, everybody out there: if you're a Goo Goo Dolls fan, no shade. It's okay. It's okay.
Dizzy Up the Girl is still a great album.
And you're naming all these bands who I didn't care for actually very much, but anyway, but yes. By that time I was really heavily into grunge. I was like, oh my god, my life is Nirvana and Alice in Chains. Those are my big people. Made Chris Cornell rest in peace. He was another good one too. Yeah, I was actually that one hit me hard recently, because like back in the day when Kurt died, it hit me hard, really hard. When Lane Stanley died, it hit me really hard. When they all start kind of like Scott Weiland died, it hit me kind of like, it's funny. Each of these ones are kind of spread out, but they're actually hitting me harder than I thought. Like, I feel like my early 20s are over or something. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Like, you listen to Kurt Cobain and all this, and like there was something about like when he passed, he was really in like the thick of it.
Yes.
There's something about Chris Cornell who's like now was a guy of a certain age, but to think that he had been potentially carrying that same sadness and depression for that long is really heartbreaking.
I'm very happy I got to see him in concert. I got to see them in concert. I saw Soundgarden, so I was very happy. I saw them at Lollapalooza years ago, and I was very happy I got to see them.
Awesome.
So it's kind of cool. So now, so speaking of this kind of stuff, okay, like I said, you guys do other things, and Christina and I talk about her acting work and stuff, but Hollywood's about creating content nowadays, and almost every single person I talk to now I interview is like, they're creating content also on the side. And I want you to explain to people what Pretext is, and then we're gonna dig into it. So whichever one wants to tell me what Pretext is.
Okay. Sure. Yeah. Pretext is a short film birthed by Jeremy and
Congratulations. Yes.
It felt like it was birthed, literally. It felt like it.
Yes.
It's funny, it just came about really quickly. We were having a conversation at a bar, and I was talking about something that happens in rape investigations called pretext calling. It is a real thing where they have the victim call the alleged rapist in front of a detective. That detective sort of leads the victim in what to say to the rapist, and it's a conversation that can go on for a while, and they encourage the victim to act like they enjoyed what the rapist did to them, and indulge in the details and get the perpetrator to admit to something. It's just to lead them into some sort of admission. The problem with these tapes is that they're not admissible in court. So you put the victim through this trauma, and then they're not even admissible in court. So we really just wanted to shine a light on it and say this thing exists. It's very traumatizing for victims and traumatizing for detectives as well.
Yes.
We didn't want to demonize cops at all. We wanted to just shine a light and say there's something wrong in the system here. This is what it looks like in, a short film, and really just put the question out there to the public of, does this thing need to exist?
Yeah. And I think another interesting thing that I remember learning about was that there is supposed to be, in these cases, if the victim is a woman, there's supposed to be a woman advocate in the room. And because of lack of resources and because of whatever, like corners getting cut, there often isn't. So it's like this woman alone in a room with a bunch of strange men having to act like she loved the thing that this person did to her.
That sounds horrendous. That sounds horrendous.
Yeah.
I mean, wow. Yeah, I know that much when we talk. I know that part. That's crazy. And I mean, okay, before we break this down even further, so Jeremy, she brings this idea to you over. You said over coffee or tea or something. Like, what did you? I mean, what were you like? Oh, Sarah sounds. I mean, what was your thought at first when you heard that idea?
My thought at first was like, I couldn't believe this exists.
Yeah.
Like, my first thought was just processing this information and going like, I've read a lot about this stuff, and I mean, you watch and I've watched a lot of things on TV and others and that and books and that, and I never heard of this, and I couldn't believe something that is so blatantly re-traumatizing, in training manuals for the thing, it says, oh, this probably will re-traumatize this person, maybe even worse than the initial act. Mm-hmm. So that was my first response, was just shock. And then I think as we started talking, we had wanted to enter into this film festival that we both are aware of and close to, and we wanted to come up with something, and we had been trying to think of something, and then all of a sudden this thing got presented, and it was like, oh, this is our movie. And it was more the thing of just going, I think I imagine that many people don't know this thing exists, and this is a good way to just let them know it does.
That's again, when I touched on when I watched, I didn't know this happened either. And never heard before in my life either. I was like, well, what is this? So it's called Pretext Invest. What's it called again?
Pretext Calling.
Pretext Calling. God, and that's woo.
Yeah.
Okay,
they use the call. Then they'll bring in the guy the alleged rapist, and then they'll play the call as a way to rattle the guy. And then usually what happens is these guys hear it and they're like, I want my lawyer.
Yeah, and that's it.
Yeah.
And then that pretext call, which these calls can go on, because the detective has an earbud in his ear. So if the woman starts, or woman or child, they do this with children.
Oh my God.
Well. That is something to know. They do this with children. The woman, child, man, whoever is on the call, if they start to lose it or get emotional, the detective can then disconnect the call. So then they'll be like, you need to call them back. You need to call them back right now. Like, they're going to get suspicious if you don't call them back. So it can go on for a very long time until the detective feels like he has enough information. So, these can last like hours, these phone calls. And it's so traumatizing for victims, and really is the question of what's the point?
Right. Oh my God! Like I said, I never knew. And so now, full disclosure for my radio listeners who may not know, podcasts who may not know this, I'm a survivor of a violent act and rape. I was beat up at knife points and raped and left for dead. So I survived that 20 years ago. And I told you a little about that on the show, because that's the reason why when I saw this, because I was researching Christina, I saw this came up. I said, "Oh, I'll watch it. It's not that long, and I'll watch it." and it blew me away. First of all, your performance is amazing. I'm not too much really give. There's not really much to just give away, but there's just one of the scenes. I was telling Christina about this later. One of the scenes that really got me, which really got me, because I'm also a father and grandfather, and I have daughters and a granddaughter. When Jeremy at the end, sitting there at home while I'm presuming that's your daughter running around playing around you, and the gravity of what your day was like hits you, and there's no words. It's in your face. Your emotion changes in your face. I sobbed like a baby. Sobbed like a baby. Called my daughter after, just like, I love you. I just want to say I love you. She's like, what's wrong, Dad? I'm like, I just want to say I love you. It's because it was like, that said so much about saying anything. And so Jeremy, because your performance is, because Christina's performance, of course, just brilliant also. And I'll talk about that in a second. But I felt like you just said earlier, you didn't want to demonize cops or detectives. And I think you really did show, just from that scene alone, that it's tough for you too.
Yeah, thank you very, very much. Thank you. There was a lot of conversation about how we could make the cop, how we could essentially humanize everybody in this thing. That thing came out of conversations with Christina, who grew up around cops and knows that that thing that takes its toll, and they may not show it and they may not be practiced in showing it, but it really, really, really takes its toll. And how do you get that across in a moment?
Because again they are, and again I do this watching Jeremy, and that's the feedback I've gotten too. Like, nobody could hold the gravity that Jeremy holds in this.
Oh my God, completely.
He's a perfect human, but to me there is no creator like Jeremy. So having him was such a gift. But we really lost my train of thought a little bit. But really just showing that the system doesn't serve anybody,
right?
And how can we illustrate that? And when we came up with that last little scene, and I remember shooting it that day of like, okay, we have something here. Just how quiet and how heavy it was in the room when we were shooting it.
Wow.
And how he was able to really embody that story and that essence that we wanted to pull out was just pretty magic.
Oh no, it's completely, and the way you shot it, as you pull away and you're up and you're pulling and you're seeing more of the room and you're seeing the girl running around and just like it's just like, wow, it was very powerful.
Thank you.
Very, very powerful. And then Christina, your performance, of course. Here's the thing. Okay, so I didn't like we didn't like Jeremy's character at first, as he's like telling you, "Come on, you got to do this." You're like, "Oh my God, he's pushing her," and you don't like her at first. So of course you get totally redeemed at the end. Then you have the scene in between there where you have the girl and the guy at the party. That's a whole other thing too. But Christina, you had the hard part, especially too. Is you're the rape victim, and you just you're a great actress. You did such a great job of the anger, and there was some humor in it, some unexpected kind of humor in it, and in your language and frustration. You covered all of that. Could you shake that off that day, or did you have to have 10 drinks afterwards? Like, how were you that day?
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like this is a story that I've carried for a while, and I just wanted to, in a way, in my small way, carry all women that have been through this, and I think that is where we wanted to show that emotional roller coaster, that grief doesn't look one way, and pain doesn't look one way, and showing the multitude of that emotional reaction, and that all of it is okay, all of it, there's permission and room for all of it. And then the day of, it was so funny. It's like we had worked on this story. We had talked about this story. We knew we wanted to tell this story. And in between takes, it was almost like joy, because it wasn't like I was crying in between takes. I didn't need to sit there and be in my corner moaning.
Okay.
There was almost like joy in between takes. We were goofing off because we knew we were holding on to this story that we really wanted to tell and were excited to tell. So there was more excitement than anything.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and for me as an artist, people often ask me that about doing something dark, but I feel like it releases something. It doesn't exhaust me.
Okay.
Yeah, that whole day, I mean, from my side, that whole day was like watching one long magic trick.
Wow.
Like she would, you would tell her like, okay, this shot or this, we're gonna do a run of it where it's quiet grief, and then there was one we're gonna do a run of it where it's full of irony and sarcasm, and then one where she's enraged, and in between takes we are like goofing off, talking in weird voices, dancing around like idiots, laughing our butts off, and then she's like, okay, and then action, and I mean, this is, Christina's a genius, and this kind of massive like talent and ability to just instantly enter each of these emotional landscapes, and like, to me, that's kind of like even more impressive than if she was, there in it all day.
The method thing,
like, be a person and be like a delight on the set and so much fun to be around, and then the minute action is called, you get what you see in the thing, and like needing no breaks, needing no, nothing between. She's like, okay, great, you want this? Boom, done. You want this? Done.
Wow.
And it was like all day long watching this like unbelievable magic trick, and I'm just, my job is to just like be a normal cop, so I just got to like, I feel like I got like a front row seat at like the best theater in town.
Yeah, no, I mean, your performances. I mean, so I'm looking at, so now you say it that way, so I guess what we see on screen is probably bits and pieces of different takes.
Oh, for sure.
Because you have some of it, like I said, there's some sarcasm, there's like seriousness, there's like your crime, and it's like a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense, because that whole sequence, it is one long, you're just going off. It's like, wow. And like I said, I did a little piece of acting in a movie recently, and I laughed now at myself because they go, James, you're sending your sides, and it was just 2 pages. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do with my life? I'm like, I'm going to learn these lines. And I had to drive the scene. I was the lead in the scene. I was like, oh my God, this is kind of crazy. So when I look at you guys, you do something like this, I'm like, I bow down to you guys, hand over. I'm just like, yeah. I don't even know how you guys do it. I mean, that means you guys are actors. I mean, that's just, whew, I'm like, it's amazing. But okay, so now, did you listen to tapes and stuff of actual pretexting calling?
No, we did not.
So this all came off of just your imagination of what it could be like, or kind of some research of how it's set up. But like, that all that dialogue you wrote, that was just from you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just from us, yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. And so how'd you come down with it? You sit in front of your computer or whatever it is you do. You sat down and said, okay, I'm gonna write this scene. Yeah. Like, was it like magic? Were you both just like, were the words just coming to you like divine intervention, or?
It's funny, we kind of joked about that, because when we did decide to sit down and write it, I think we wrote it in 45 minutes.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was like magic. It just sort of came. I mean, we always talk about story. I mean, we're always talking about story and creating and how we want to create. So we had the story really fleshed out at that point. And just like we knew he was going to play the detective, I would play the victim. And then it was just like, these are the points we want to get across. It's not admissible in court. Like, this person, I know this person, because it's oftentimes somebody that we know. It's not, not always a stranger running out of the bushes, So we knew the points we wanted to hit. How do we make it, succinct, fit all these points in? And, so the writing process just kind of flowed out of that in a very quick way once we had sat down and talked about story for a while.
Yeah, we just, met at my apartment and, like, sat across from each other and pretty much did the scene.
Oh, wow.
And just kind of improv'd it a little, and then just, as we were going, typed it into a Word document.
Yeah.
Like, it was just a very quick thing, and I think we were like, great, let's go now get a drink.
Yeah, I'm sure. Oh my goodness. Now, the choice of having him have a daughter, was that a conscious choice, or just kind of happened that way?
That comes from me, because I come from a family of police officers, and my father was special forces. So okay. I come from very militaristic, hardened men that are very affected by the systems that they are in, and you have to abide by the system no matter what you think about the system. It's like honoring of the system first, and really I wanted to kind of shine a little tiny light on what that does to then the family life.
Okay.
And so there was definitely some personal written in there, and I definitely wanted to have it be a daughter for sure.
Okay.
And yeah,
I thought it was a brilliant choice. I was like, was that intentional, or was that something that's kind of had you get a girl on the set? I mean, I don't know what was going on. I was like, that was very much. I thought that if you had a son running around, not saying again, I'm a man who was raped. It was like it can't happen to boys, but I felt like for this story, having a little girl, it made it more effective.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think like how much in that situation this cop with the woman with Christina, how much this cop has to like in a way divorce himself from his fatherhood.
Yes.
And like how much he has to like protect himself, because I'm sure that sitting up there have got to be moments where he's like, this is my daughter sitting in front of me.
I'm sure. Daughter.
And I cannot, because of the way that the system deals with it. I mean, if there's one thing in the movie that I don't ever want to say trying to villainize, but that we are really trying to, if there's one character we're trying to like point out the flaws of, it is the system.
Okay.
For me, like, there's a really difficult thing with rape cases because we live in a country that's like innocent until proven guilty is our way of approaching crime. And with a rape case, what that does is that just because of the logic of that, if the rapist is innocent until proven guilty, then the victim is guilty until proven innocent.
Yes.
And they're essentially, you have that so that it's always they're being scrutinized and they've got to like prove this thing that happened to them. And the because of that system, the cops, I guess, their first thing is like, well, is this person lying? Is this person lying? And then also that person, the victim, their body becomes a piece of evidence. Mm-hmm. And like all of these things that are systemically flawed, that's I think what we're trying to get at. And that this guy has a daughter, and how do you like do this job and have a little girl and go like, this is the world that I'm sending her. I mean, you talked earlier about sending a piece of art out into the world like that, but like the child to send out into a world that could do this to her.
Yeah.
Yes. Completely.
It's putting out the question too, like subtly, of this process could just repeat over and over.
Yep.
And there is no answer to how to change it as of right now.
Yeah, and that for this cop, the system turns him essentially having to like be a mouthpiece for this system, turns him into a ghost.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. It's because it must be hard for just cops in general whether they have sons and daughters. It must be hard because they see what can be out there and some of the other side of life. That can happen, and each day your son and daughter or daughter are going out there, and you're like, I hope they don't get caught up in it, I hope they don't get caught because of it, I hope you're just hoping none of this stuff happens because you know what can happen.
Yeah, especially when it's happened to you, and you're like in that world. Yeah, I mean, I think of that, wanting to have kids eventually, and what that would mean to have a daughter, but also what it would mean to have a son, and know that A, it happens to men too, and B, like, the way to stop it happening to both men and women is to start with the child. And we like the culture of telling girls that this is how this is how not to get raped, instead of telling boys don't rape.
Exactly. That's exactly it. It's like, come on, people. And my brother, he's an online blogger, and he counsels people on dating and stuff. And he was like, he came to my room the other day. He's like, James, I can't believe this. It really is true. A lot of these guys just don't get it. Yeah. They really think when a girl says no, oh, she doesn't really mean that, or I'll convince her otherwise, but she smiled at me and said hello. Like, it's that simple. And not all of them go to rape or anything. I'm not trying to suggest that at all. But when he was telling me, just like, a lot of these guys would argue with him on his blog, saying, "But no, she's always smiling, she's always friendly every day. There's something there." Or she finally broke up with her boyfriend. Now I have a chance. But you've been friends for 10 years. But no, that's why we should be together. We've been friends for 10 years. But she says she doesn't look at you. I'm like, some of these guys really just, it's that culture of just kind of that patriarchal society, just like, well, no, I can get what I want.
Yeah, and then you see like you have these horrible stories of like a guy turning a woman down in front of a nightclub and he like kills her.
Yes,
because
yes.
it is, and being a man in this in the culture is like that's what we're taught. I mean, we're taught it with like romantic comedies. Like I remember watching a million romantic comedies as in my early 20s, where the whole premise of the movie was like the girl says no and the guy is persistent until she says yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that is and it's awarded. That kind of
right.
Persistence awarded, or I'm sorry, rewarded.
Yeah, rewarded. Yeah.
And like that, I think so yes, there are many of those guys do that thing where and it doesn't come to rape, but that is like the most logical, far-reaching
right.
Of that.
And I think we've also talked about too the mentality of someone who rapes. It's like we can't separate it so far and be like, oh, that's just an evil person. That's a pathological evil person. A lot of times that mentality is like, no, she wants it. She just doesn't know that she wants it. Like I know what she wants more than she does, and that's sometimes the rationale behind it. It's like, no, she's giving me all these signs. She totally wants it, And so they sort of rationalize themselves into these horrible situations, and they go too far, and in the wrong hands, a lot of people can be pushed that far. So it's not like we can't keep separating like humanity and rapists. Like
I agree.
There is, there is a coming together, and what is that mentality behind it? And a lot of times it's that. It's like, I know what you want more than you do, and I know what's good for you more than you do.
Well, that's very true. I'm glad you said it, Allison, because I said that because Christina, because my rapist and I were friends. We worked together, and we were nurses. We worked together, and I used to confide in him in all of my family problems. So it's one of those things where it's like I saw him as a person. I mean, for like 2 years, he was a friend of mine. He was a person who I confided in, and we would hang out together. And so when this happened to me, so shockingly, the way it happened to me at our job, actually, it was like I said, afterwards, I felt all the regular stuff, guilt and shame and all that stuff. But I was like, I kept saying he was my friend. So it's like at that time I couldn't separate humanity of it either. I couldn't separate it. It was like, he's my friend. He did this to me. Not he's this evil person did it to me. He was my friend and did it to me.
Yeah, and that's such a. I mean, because I think the part of the issue is that when we think of like the rapist in our minds, we think of like I think instantly we go to like the stranger.
Yes.
The scary, the scary psychopathic, sick stranger, and we don't think that like these dudes they're just normal guys who are in your life, and that when it happens, a lot of times it takes the people it takes the victims sometimes years to even say, oh, that was rape.
Yes. Right.
And that to me is that's like a terrifying prospect, and that still we teach, and you watch certain like the Law and Order SVUs of the world, where it's like, often they're like these scary, scary stranger monsters.
Right.
Yeah.
Not always. And the thing I was going to say, to piggyback off what Jeremy said earlier about us guys and how we approach women, well, Christina knows the opposite of that. She knows how guys are always, who have the mentality they have towards women. That side of it. I mean, I always feel like women know better what it's like to have, get hit on a lot or, be talked to a certain way. I mean, you guys, you know that whole story, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And a lot of guys don't know it until it happens to them. And it's funny. A little side note: I have straight friends, gay friends, and they're all a mixture and everything. And it's funny when my straight male friends get hit on by gay guys. It's hilarious because they always say, "Now I know what it feels like what girls go through." A little bit. It's like, I said, but the funny thing is, we're all guys. So you're basically a taste of your own medicine. Because I said
totally.
guys of any, doesn't matter what gender, what their orientation is, we're guys. Everybody's just guys. So I think it's kind of funny they said, but women seriously have to deal with this stuff all the time. Like just in theory. I mean, it depends on where you live and stuff, but just like in theory, if you go out, if you party, if you go to a restaurant, if you walk down the street, if you wear a certain outfit, women have to deal with this stuff on a regular basis.
Yeah, well, and I think just like slowly starting to change people's minds, and I also think, you know, it's women and men, but it's also women to women.
Yes.
I think that women are also part of perpetuating the, you know, what were you wearing? Were you asking for it? You know, I think that we have to embrace from all sides the change of the rape culture that is so ingrained in us, and attack it from all ends, because it's not just the men looking at women a certain way, which is definitely horrible, and that exists in jobs, and it's still like I come up against it still in creative opportunities and work opportunities everywhere. It still exists everywhere. I still very much know I'm a woman and not an equal, you know.
Wow.
But I also have run into it, and it almost breaks my heart more, because I expect it from men, but when you see it from another woman, and when you get it from another woman, there's almost like, wait a minute, we're supposed to be a tribe that sticks together.
Yeah, come on, girl. Like, come on.
Yeah, to fight this thing, and you as a woman you're perpetuating rape culture by calling out something that a woman is wearing. I remember I had an altercation with a close friend of mine because she said something about a girl wearing something on Hollywood Boulevard. She's like, well, if she walks around like that, she's asking to be raped. And
my God. Oh, my God.
Because I was like, do you realize the danger of what you just said?
Exactly.
You know? That statement is dangerous, and perpetuating it is such a huge part of the problem, which, and that fight ended up being a great conversation and ended up like opening a lot of things, but we have to all be willing to be brave enough to call out those things when we hear them and say that no longer has room to exist, because we can no longer afford to have that mindset, at least not around me. Like, if you're going to have that mindset, don't have it around me.
Okay, girl, I believe it. That's that's the whole thing. Like, well, she had a couple of drinks, so like, no, or she flirted, so she flirted with him, and when no is no is no is no. When you attack somebody, you're attacking somebody. And actually, I want people out there. Rape is not about sex. Sorry, guys. Sorry about everybody. It's not about sex. It's about power. It's not about sex. So let's get that out the way. But Christina, I want to ask you about that. You bring up a point that we always hear this all the time. That's chuckle a little bit because it's perpetuated on television all the time. But about how women treat other women sometimes, and you bring up a good point. How some women are harder on other women more than men sometimes. You're like, what's that about?
Yeah. Well, it just, for me, it breaks my heart, because it's like, we only have each other, you know what I mean? It's like, build each other up.
Right.
And there's so many, I just think back to amazing organizations that I've been in touch with, like Rain and Peace Over Violence.
Rain, yes.
Yeah, and you can go in and you can talk to, there's headquarters of these places all over, especially like Peace Over Violence in downtown LA.
Yes.
I've gone and talked to them, and the amazing things that those women, say to other women is like, you can be walking down the street naked, and it is not permission.
Exactly.
Or that does not excuse rape.
It doesn't.
It does not. Nope. And anyone that looks at it that way, it's like, I don't care what you're wearing, or if you were flirting with the guy earlier in the evening, that doesn't equate to, okay, you deserve to be raped. Mm-hmm. And when women support that mindset, like I said, it's almost more heartbreaking, because we expect it from men, but we expect the women to, every woman in essence is a little reflection of our mother and a caretaker, and so when you don't take care of one another, there's such a heartbreak there, Well,
I'll give you a point, because Jodie Foster won an Oscar in The Accused for almost that whole same thing, which was a great film. And showed that, she was partying and having a good time, but again, she was raped. And it was power. It wasn't like she was saying, come on, boys, come get me. That was not it at all. It was such a powerful performance. And folks have not seen that. It's a film from the early 90s, but it was before Silence of the Lambs. And she won an Oscar for it, Best Actress Oscar, and it was a really powerful film.
Yeah, she's incredible. Yeah, and I think another thing that's interesting that I've seen that gets touched on with when you're talking about the way women approach it, and this is also true of men, but because so many of these situations are not as cut and dry as like I was attacked by a stranger in an alley.
Mm-hmm.
So many of these situations are like it was somebody I knew, was a friend. Often the people that you're going to for support are people in your social circle, many of whom know that person and are unwilling to believe about them that they would do this.
Yes.
And so they start to they are so like dead set against seeing that person in that context that they start to make you out to be the guy because they're like, well, you're lying or whatever it is, or
dramatic.
You're dramatic.
Yes.
Oh,
dramatic. How many times have women been told that? It's like, oh my gosh, you're being dramatic.
Yes.
It wasn't that bad. It wasn't. Right. It's like, no, maybe be quiet and listen.
Right.
Maybe expand that you don't know the ins and outs of what this person is capable of. And again, you go back to that interesting point of power. And I think about a woman, I also think women that are very like, I really advocate for women being very comfortable in their sexuality, being very deep-seated in that, knowing what it is, knowing what it looks like. But when women are in that, when they're very comfortable in their sexuality, comfortable in their body, there is a power to that. They can walk through the world with this power. And sometimes that comes across to other men and other women as a threat.
Right.
And so the sort of pushback to that can be men overreacting, men trying to get that power back. And so that can equal rape, that can equal women being cruel to them. But it's like, I want all women to be walking through the world rooted in their sexuality, rooted in their power as a woman, and comfortable in their body, whatever that looks like.
Right.
And without the negative of women around them treating them horribly or the men around them raping them, But I think it's like we need to change our mentality of how we look at women. I still think we have so far to go.
And I've never heard of a case where I've never heard anybody ask of a man, well, how are you dressed in any situation?
Of course not.
You know, like there's not even like a version of that for men that you think of, oh, that's slutty or whatever. There's like, that doesn't exist. That thing doesn't exist.
That's so true. That is so true.
It's this wild, it's this crazy thing where it's like, because we've demonized women's sexuality so much, and have not demonized male sexuality really at all. I think now we're starting to not demonize it generally, but like see what harm it can do.
Yeah.
We are starting to like ask those questions, and certainly those are questions that we are interested in asking, because like we live in a culture that's still like, no matter how woke everybody is, the basic like fundamental thing is that women's sexuality is wrong. And I mean, to go back to the Bible, like that women's sexuality is why we don't live in paradise anymore.
Right.
The fall, we're right back to the fall.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's funny because I saw Wonder Woman yesterday, and I thought it was a beautifully done film and lots of girl power in it. I was like, oh my God, it's girl power. It's like, it was so interesting to see. To me, I felt like it was a film that was taken seriously. Because we've been waiting for a Wonder Woman movie for 100 years, I guess. I mean, all these other movies come out, and I feel like, and it was a female director, of course, who did Monster, and another great film from years ago. But I mean, it was like this movie was like, it was such girl power in it. It was like it was a superhero action film, yet it was a woman, and there was a lot of femininity in it, and there was like this kind of fun sexuality in it, and innocence, and I mean, all the Amazon scenes were just amazing. So I thought it was really well done. Speaking of that, I would say we kind of shun the female stuff all the time. Like, what's that about? It's too much. It's way too much. And I thought Madonna helped us out in the 80s with all that. What happened? Come on.
I feel like we'll and you just hope that pendulum keeps swinging, and one day we'll, stay on the other side. But yeah, we're making progress, but I just think that we often, look at America and we're like, we're so progressive. We're so far ahead of everyone else. It's almost like we have this giant ego, and it's like, wait a minute, slow your roll. We still have a lot to work on.
Yeah. Yes, we do.
And by just saying, no, we're great, we're America, we're so progressive, we don't look at the dark corners of things. And there's still so much that we are not accepting of and not willing to look at, face, and fix.
Yeah.
True.
I mean, you just look at, like, it's enough to, like, look at the committees who make decision about female, like, reproductive health.
Yes.
And they're all old men.
Exactly.
Like, they're all old men with old, outdated morals.
Yes.
And so that's still who's running the show, really, at the end of the day. So it almost sometimes feels like, Wonder Woman is like, throw him a bone. Like a thing like Wonder Woman.
Right.
A movie like that, or a TV series. And hope, I mean, there's more and more, and specifically, like, when you get into the intersection of, like, feminism and race and all that.
Yes.
So you start to have things like Insecure, the Issa Rae thing, and
yes.
This new web series that's going to turn into a show called Brown Girls and all this stuff.
Yes.
Like, it feels like the thing is starting to change, but really it's changing here in progressive LA, progressive New York. But so much of this country is still, I think the folks running it are often old men with old morals.
Well, and I don't want it to be like a novelty. It shouldn't be a novelty.
Yeah, totally. That
minority, that women, that TV shows with different races are, it shouldn't be a novelty. It should be the norm.
I agree.
And I think that's where we still have so much farther to go.
Yeah, it should just be regular stuff. Like, no one's asking for, like, say, again, that whole, like, we want special treatment. Like, no, we just want equal treatment. So it's just
exactly. That's all we're asking for.
That's what we're asking for.
Women, as women, different races, everything. We're just treat us equally. That's it.
Right, and I feel the same way about size. I'm a big guy, and I'm like, and I mean, some of us are bigger men, or some of us are bigger women, and that's starting to happen a little bit too. Thank God, with Christine Metz and all that, and all this stuff starting to happen. But it's like, I don't want the size shaming either. It's like some of us are built bigger, and we can still be viable as a lead of a TV show, and not as like this nebbish kind of, I get the skinny wife TV show. I'm talking about you could be a regular lead in a regular TV show or a regular movie.
It's so funny you say that because, as a fellow big guy.
That's right.
The next thing that we want to make, and a story that I am deeply interested in telling in every medium, in poetry and in filmmaking, and the next project that Christina and I are going to do is going to be about male body image and male disordered eating.
Wow. Okay, I'm excited.
Yeah, that's a thing that, like, I've struggled with a binge eating disorder for many years.
Okay.
And I deal with my own body image stuff, and that is a story that weirdly it goes into the same stuff we're talking about. The fact that, like, for men to have an eating disorder and body image stuff, there's like an added layer of shame because that's for women.
Yes.
It's a woman's disease. Yes. It's a woman's disorder. It's a woman's thing. So for a man to have it, I think there are so many men out there suffering very, very secretly because they don't want to admit that they have this thing.
Yeah, and also, if I can add, as we've been developing this story, writing into that too, that this person is equally beautiful, desirable.
Thank you. Good.
Developed.
Yes.
Passionate and gorgeous inside and out. And how we tell that story is really exciting. We're really excited about the couple writing sessions we've had and developing this. So
I will totally support. You can come back on my show because I'm like, no, because seriously, in all seriousness, because there's a bunch of, because I work in this medium, even as a host. Wow, James, you're just really big, and I don't know, or how'd you get that interview because you're this, or like, I mean, they look at my look sometimes, and it's like, I'm a host. I'm not. I mean, who cares? I look like a regular person that's out there watching the show, and for me, there are a lot of people, because I get fan mail and stuff and fan emails and things where they think I'm attractive and sexy. Both men and women hit on me, and it's like, My mother said something to me years ago. My mother's a big woman herself. And she said years ago, she's like, it goes, people like your big fat mama. She used to always say it all the time. She's like, she goes, James, I mean, men of all sizes, muscle guys, when she was single for a while, she's like, she has a husband now, but when she was single for a while, she's like, they love your big fat mama. She goes, it's because they realize some people like a little meat on the bones. And some people are actually more into personality and other things. It's not just about the body, and we're so body obsessed, period. If you're not at the gym 5 days a week, what's wrong with you? Gym life, hashtag gym life, like all that stuff's going on. It's like it bugs, and excuse my language, folks, the shit out of me. But I mean, I want to be healthy, but some of us actually are healthy and bigger. My blood work came back. I don't have diabetes. I don't have there's other things I don't have. I'm a bigger guy. I mean, it just kind of happens.
The level of like stigmatization about what it means to be a fat person, a heavy person, is like it's crazy. It's amazing. Like I think there's the thing of like you're fat and instantly all of this stuff downloads into the brain about like this about you and this about you and this about you and this about you. And I mean that's a thing that I'm very interested in like tackling and changing.
Wow.
And just the arbitrary nature of attraction. Like it is weird to think that if I was living a few hundred years ago in a certain like tribe in a certain part of the world, I would be the fucking hottest guy in the tribe because I have the most cows.
Yes. No, yes. No, so it's so true. No, I know. It's so true. Is that funny? It's so true.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah. Well, and and just like encouraging the more that we all embrace what we are and sit in that, it opens up the door for other people who are feeling insecure about it to root themselves in what they are and be like, yes, this is what I am. I accept it. Because ultimately people are attracted to people with confidence.
Yes.
So it's like, if you're rooted in what you are, it's like your mama. I go back to your mama. It's like, she owned it.
She did.
And that's the most beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. That's the most embracing and attractive thing. Mm-hmm. And we need the diversity of shape and size. So it's just, I don't know.
I agree.
And we are taught not to, to
conform.
Fat folks are taught not to be confident.
Right.
Like, I was recently reading a novel, and like every fat character introduced was either stupid, lazy, or cruel.
See?
And there were many, and I was like, "Where's the books without that shit?"
Right.
Like, so it's like there is a lot of stigma still around it, and so the fight towards that confidence is like can feel like an extremely uphill battle.
One of my actor friends told me the other day, he was like, "I'm tired of being called an in-betweener." Because what's happening to him is they're like, you're not fat enough to be the jolly best friend, and you're not skinny enough to be the lead.
Yeah. God forbid you have, like, a body that falls somewhere in I mean, to me, that doesn't speak to anything other than, like, the lack of imagination of some of the
Exactly. Exactly.
But, like, and I do think that's being challenged now. I
think
there are people on TV shows who are, like, a normal size.
Yeah.
Or just, like, of all different shapes and sizes, And I think that there is work being done towards that area, which is a great relief to see happening.
I do too, and I also want to do a side note that, and there are some folks who are naturally thin. So there's all spectrums of size. There's some folks who are naturally thin, and some folks are naturally big, and everything in between. And we need to, and like Christina said, we need to just have confidence in what we carry, what we feel ourselves, so it emits out, and everybody feels good, and then just the barriers are broken down. I totally agree with that.
I mean. Yeah, it's an amazing thing to, have been in like kind of eating disorder communities for years and seen so many people who have like what would be considered an incredibly desirable, beautiful body now, and they are doing horrible things to themselves to maintain it.
Yeah.
And like, and to see that and to see. Then, they'll say to people, "Oh, I'm suffering from this thing," and it's the response they get is, "How? No, you're not. Like,
right.
You don't have disorder. Look at you. You're perfect.
You're perfect. Yeah.
Right.
And like that suffering, also that particular kind of suffering, becomes just as invalidated as the kind of suffering that I go through as a fat person. That like it's again, what we're addressing is less a villainization of people and more like the pointing out of a system. That this is the system that we live in. That you know, you drive down. I mean, you drive down Sunset Boulevard and you see a 50-foot billboard of a beautiful model next to a 50-foot billboard of a cheeseburger, and I'm like, what do you want from me?
Exactly.
What the hell do you want from me?
Exactly.
You all day long.
Well, it kills me. Okay, here's what kills me. So last night with my brother and sister, and we're eating, and we're in West Hollywood eating. Okay, you have 8 million gyms nearby, but then there's Shake Shack right over here, and it's over here. I'm like, well, I'm gonna go to Shake Shack, obviously, and get me a hamburger and a shake. I mean, come on.
Yeah, you start to think that like the food industry and like the wellness and exercise industry are like in cahoots, and they're just like playing catch with us. They're just like, now you take them. Now you take them. Now you take them. You know.
I agree. I don't like that at all. No, I'm very excited. First of all, I can talk to you guys forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
You guys are my buddies. I mean, Christina, you already know you're my buddy, but Jeremy, you're my buddy now too.
Yay.
You're in.
Same.
But stay on the line. I'm gonna end the show. Stay on the line. But I want you guys to tell people out there where to find Pretext and kind of what's going on with it a little bit.
Totally. Well, you can follow both of us on social media. We have Pretext all over our social media right now. My Twitter handle is at @IamC_E_S.
Yes.
Yeah, that's it. I never tell my handle.
Yes.
And then Instagram stuff is on there too. My handle there is just at Christina Elizabeth Smith.
Yeah.
And for me, you can find at GERMYRADIN.
That's his Twitter.
Yeah, and my Instagram.
And his Instagram.
Okay.
Okay, he's more efficient than me.
You're like me. I'm like James Lott Jr. all over the place. Just all over this place. I finally did that. I finally did that. I finally did it. My publicist told me, James, just make everything just the same. I was like, okay, I tried it.
It's hard when your name is Christina Elizabeth Smith because there's like 4,000.
Yeah. You do have that problem, yes, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. You guys, so you can find Pretext. It's on YouTube. It's also on there too. You can find it there. It's on our page. A lot of help. You can follow this. Of course, this interview and stuff is going to be on iTunes. It'll be up probably later today. And it's going to also be on Spreaker.com, JLJ Media. Go there, like, subscribe, comment, tell me what's going on. If you want to get in touch with them about anything, come through me and I will pass you on to them. And if you want to talk more about the film, want to show the film somewhere, or have them come speak somewhere and talk about it. I want to ask you, did you guys get into that festival you want to get into?
We have like submitted to TIFF and Sundance and a bunch of them right now. So we're just waiting on hearing back.
And folks out there, festivals are not easy. I mean, there's a million festivals out there, and lots of submissions that go on. So it's sometimes going to be a long process. I know that for sure.
Yes. Yeah,
so we'll keep our fingers. Cause I'm like, it's such a good. You guys, I think you should see it. You should watch it. A lot of my friends who saw it said they were blown away. And they're the ones who were the catalysts that said, have them on your radio show, have them talk about it some more. So,
thank you.
Thank you for doing that. And you guys out there, I will talk to you next time. Take care.